If you've ever watched a 5-0 or pro player play pickleball, you probably think to yourself, it looks so effortless. And it's usually not because they have some magical shot that you don't. It's actually just because they see the game differently and they have a lot of strategies that you don't.
In today's video, we're gonna show you 5 things that 5-0 plus players do that lower level players don't.
So let's get into it. So the first strategy that we want to talk about is when to let a ball bounce versus when to take it out of the air. Now, something that I see a lot of lower level players and intermediates do is they let every ball bounce, right? And so even if it pushes them back, they'll kind of stay back. And now I'm stuck back here and I'm really not able to be super offensive when I'm just hanging out back here. The other thing I see beginners and intermediate players do is they're overreaching. So they try to volley every ball out of the air. And now I'm just super compromised because I'm just overreaching. I really cannot be offensive from this position. Now, something that high level players do is they think about the return on investment on the type of shot that they're getting. So a lot of this has to do with ball height. Okay, a rule of thumb is the closer the ball is to the ground where you're contacting it, the less options you have to be offensive. Remember, there's 2 types of shot in pickleball. There's shots that you hit up on and shots that you hit down on. And you want to create a scenario for your opponent to have to hit up on a shot. So if I'm a high level player, I'm going to take a ball out of the air only if it gives me some type of offensive advantage. So for example, if my opponent hits a ball out of the air that pulls me to the side, for me to take that out of the air is actually pretty smart, because if I let that bounce, now that's bouncing here and I'm pretty compromised unless I'm already on balance. Now, if my opponent hits a ball that bounces a little bit deeper and higher, I'm going to step back and maybe I can actually do some topspin or be a little more aggressive with it because I've pivot stepped back and that ball is bouncing higher. A good rule of thumb is if that ball is going to land and bounce higher than the point of contact where I would have volleyed it, then I'm going to try to choose the one that bounces higher, because that higher contact point is going to give me more options. So really deciding which balls to take out of the air versus which balls to let bounce based on the desired outcome of what you can do with it with offense, I think is a really important thing to think about when you're deciding whether to pivot step back or to volley a dink out of the air.
If you really want to play at the higher level, you have to start aiming your speed ups. Not just speeding up the right ball, but also locating it in the right spot. So we're going to talk about that in this tip, about where to aim your speed ups and kind of how to execute. So when you're dinking here, you're looking first for the right ball to speed up. Now I'm looking for something that sits up, like that one, it bounced kind of high and I probably could have sped that one up. But if I'm contacting a ball outside of my body, it's really hard to speed it up and keep it under control. So when I'm speeding a ball up off the bounce, I want to pivot step back and I want to try to catch that ball right in front of my back leg. If I can get prepped and get that paddle tip down early, now I can speed up to a lot of different locations and really confuse my opponent. So again, I'm going to look for a ball here. I'm going to try to really look for that one, and probably could have sped that one up. This one, I'm there early and I can pull, okay? Right there, I actually held the paddle and I didn't really know if I was going to speed up this way or this way till the last minute. Now, she read it really well, but this early prep allows you to really be able to change locations even in a split second. So a couple spots that I like to aim when I'm speeding the ball up is one at my opponent's paddle side hip, right? If I can get the ball right here, now they have to just decide, do I hit this backhand? Do I slide into the forehand? And if it's at the hip and not high, I'm not gonna get punished by the forehand as much. You're kind of wanting to jam them here, okay? So I'm trying to aim for that paddle side hip. Another spot that I like to aim is actually into the body. But if I'm going into the body, I actually want to have a little bit more pace on the ball. I know that's just maybe a little controversial, but it's just part of the game now. There are shots that people hit into the body and their goal is to jam you. If you were to let that ball go, it has enough pace to where it's probably going out. So I'm either gonna go into the body with pace, I'm gonna go off speed, kind of a low speed up, onto the paddle side hip or potentially to the open court if I'm able to pull them out wide. Another place you could aim is to the paddle side shoulder. You got to kind of be careful and selective on when to do this, but this could get people into that chicken wing, which is a very difficult ball to read. You just want to make sure that you don't do it at a time where they're really on balance, like sitting on their forehand. But those are the best places to aim. And again, you're going to be able to do that when you have early prep and you contact that ball inside your back leg.
The next thing that high-level players do is they have really good awareness when it comes to how big their swing is. If you watch really incredible pro players, you'll see that their swing is actually pretty compact, especially when teams are playing at the kitchen line. The further you are from your opponent, like if your opponent's back in the backcourt, you can afford to have a bigger swing, but especially playing up at the kitchen line, there's only 14 feet between me and my opponent. I need to keep my swing really short and compact. Another reason why you're gonna wanna keep your swing short and compact, so if I'm at the kitchen line and I have a really big swing, oftentimes that ball's gonna go flying out. Remember, this isn't a tennis court, this is a pickleball court. So in order to keep from hitting a ball going out, what I like to tell people is if you're at the line, keep your paddle in front of this kitchen line in your backswing and your follow through. That will kind of keep it from being compact, and you'll notice I can generate a lot of power even with this short swing, because power doesn't come from having big movement, it comes from solid contact. So if I just really focus on having solid contact here, I'm gonna be able to hit some really powerful balls. Now, vice versa, if you see your opponent wind up for a huge swing, oftentimes their ball is gonna go out. So that's gonna be one that you're gonna wanna dodge. So being aware of people's swing at the kitchen line will tell you a lot of whether it's going to be an out ball. Your short swing will give you a faster reload for firefights. And the higher levels you get into pickleball, the more important that reload is going to be.
I can typically tell someone's level in pickleball by simply standing on the side of the court and watching how they move and react in firefights. So what you'll notice at the higher level is that at the higher level, the head remains very still. Even as people are moving and shuffling across this line in a firefight, they're not changing their eye level, and their feet are quick, but they're controlled, they're balanced, and they're not moving their head like this. At the lower level, I see players in firefights and their head angles going up and down and up and down. So what we want to do here is when we get in a firefight, we want to have active feet, but we also don't, like that ball was a little lower, but we want to keep our head relatively still. So a couple things you could think about here is like you're balancing a glass of water on your head, or also not pushing your head back. We want to try to stay on this line here, right? If I push my head back and I cower back with my shoulders, when I'm in that firefight, I'm likely going to pop it up or mishit it. So I want to keep my head kind of on this line, and this is kind of how it should look.
This last tip has to do with court positioning, and it's something I see a lot of players struggle with. A lot of lower level and even intermediate players will play the court 50-50, like you're responsible for that half and you're responsible for that half. However, when you get into high level play, that's actually never true. There's always somebody that's going to be covering more than 50% of the court, and it's just learning whose ball is whose. And how you do that is you do it by tracking where the ball is on the court with your positioning. So if Barrett hits me a ball to this sideline, the correct way to position is have this person move to cover sideline. So if I go up the sideline, that's your ball. And if I go middle, that's your ball. The reason why we're leaving that side open is because this sideline to that sideline is going to be the hardest shot for me to hit. It's way easier for me to hit middle. It's way easier for me to hit sideline. So essentially what you're doing is you're covering the easiest shots for me to hit. Now I can, of course, go to that open court. It's just going to be a harder shot for me. And this is the greatest distance between here and that area. So that gives your team enough time to get there. Now, same is true on this side. If I come to this sideline, now they're going to shift to where you're covering side, now you're covering middle, and you're leaving that sideline. At no point in the game is there really any type of 50-50 when you're truly playing high-level pickleball. All you're trying to do with your foot positioning is taking away higher percentage shots and leaving lower percentage shots, forcing your opponent to hit harder shots to get to the open court.